All right, what is up? Spencer here. Just wanted to bring you a quick video on the Penn State lineup. This is WrestleStat, where they have the recruiting classes, and this is kind of their depth chart and availability thing that they've got going on here. Kind of just wanted to go through the weight classes. I'm a big Penn State fan. I like watching them wrestle. I like the coaches. I like the wrestlers. So it's been really fun kind of looking forward at what the team is going to look like this fall, and then what the team is going to look like in coming years as well. So kind of without further ado, let's get into it. So you can kind of see that the presumed starter is delineated by the ST, right? So if we look at this coming season, we've got returning champion Luke Littledahl at 125. That's pretty obvious. He's going to be there for at least 2 more years. He's took third as a freshman, first as a sophomore, so he's probably the favorite to repeat and win another title as a junior. Also came very close to making the world team, so he's a dog. So at 125, they're pretty set. They don't have a ton in the wings behind him, so Landon Seiden is coming in the year following this year, so he's probably going to be the presumed starter once Littledahl leaves. Seiden's pretty tough. I think he's got a real shot at being pretty tough in college. At 133, Blaze, right? Blaze is someone who really came into his own. I don't want to say came into his own because he's a stud. He kind of always has been, but he, didn't have the NCAA tournament that he wanted to. Sounds like he was sick, had the flu, but he went on an absolute tear since then, winning the U.S. Open, beating Jax Forrest 2-1 at Final X. So Marcus Blaze is going to be a killer. He's probably going to be pushing for an NCAA title this coming year as well. He's got several more years. Obviously, Masanosuke Ono, I think that's how you say his name. I could be wrong. No, I don't know. I don't speak Japanese, but Ono, we'll kind of see what happens with him. But I think it's possible that we see him maybe a couple times this year. I don't think they're probably going to start him over Blaze. And I think he could go up to 41. I think that's maybe a little doubtful. I think if I had to guess, I think he does a couple opens and maybe spot starts in a couple duels. But Blaze is going to be the guy for the next several years. He's going to be someone who's pushing for the top of the podium. And then Braden Weaver and Gray Burnett coming in over the next couple of years. Don't know a ton about Braden Weaver, but heard a ton about Gray Burnett. He's someone who's I think he just won Pan Ams. I think he just won U20 Pan Ams. So he's tough. You'll have to fact check me on that one. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he just won Pan Ams. So another tough Penn State guy coming in at 133. Going up to 141, this is kind of where it gets interesting. When we look at this next season, I think most people are probably guessing that Desmond is going to start, which I think would be really cool. He obviously had a crazy redshirt freshman season, beating Luke Littledahl, who ended up being the NCAA champion. He had some really, really good matches with other guys who were ranked. So Desmond is there. However, right, you've got Braden Davis, who is an All-American. Granted, he did not place this year in a pretty tough bracket, if you ask me, right? He didn't place, but he's a former All-American. He's a senior. But with 5-for-5 coming into play, I think you're going to see Desmond, right? Penn State's going to wrestle their best guy, and I think it's pretty obviously Desmond, and he's probably going to be the guy for the next several years. Again, this is another weight class that's kind of fun to look at. And at 149, you've got Shane Van Ness, returning NCAA finalist, multiple-time All-American. He's going to be pushing to win a title before he graduates, but 49 is going to be absolutely stacked. We're going to see absolute dogfights at 149. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Next year, I'm not sure what they do. I don't know a ton about Dalton Perry. I'm sure people are going to criticize me for not knowing the Penn State backups, but don't know a ton about him. I've heard a lot about Sam Herring coming out of Bishop McCourt. Really tough kid, so I would guess that maybe after Shane graduates, we might see him there, or I would guess that maybe we see Nate Desmond move up. That could be another possibility. I think Blaze moving up is a definite possibility as well, so we'll kind of have to see what they do at those lightweights. Once Shane Van Ness graduates, that's going to leave a big hole. He's tough. Next up, 157. This is an absolute logjam. This is a super, super tough one. I'm curious to see what ends up happening. You got Duke is kind of the presumed starter. Obviously, he didn't win this year. He took third, which is what Tyler Kasak did, right? Everyone I think kind of defaults to thinking that PJ Duke is the better wrestler, just because Duke started this year over Kasak. But I mean, you got to remember Kasak was a dog. Kasak I think took third twice. So Kasak is an established top 3 guy at 157. Up until this new 5-for-5 rule came out, the idea had been redshirt Kasak, redshirt Duke, and then once Mitchell leaves next year, then you have your 57 and then your 65, right? And one of them goes 65, the other goes 57. I think we probably do see PJ Duke as the starter here. He was a bad call away from probably winning an NCAA title. Everyone kind of saw what he did to Antrell Taylor at Big Tens. So PJ Duke is that guy. I think he should have beaten Landon Robidoux. I think that really screwed him. I think Kasak is just going to be a victim of the Penn State lineup here, where his junior year is going to go by, and PJ Duke's going to nail down that spot, and he's probably going to have to wait for Mitchell to graduate to slot into the 165-pound spot, if I had to guess. Is what's going to happen. Same thing with Joe Seeley, right? He's just another victim. This is such a tough lineup to get into. He's probably someone who, if I had to guess, might transfer, but it's hard to say. Not a lot of Penn State guys are transferring out. Seeley could just be here for the long haul and just never see the lineup. We'll kind of see what happens. 65, Messenbrink's kind of the unquestioned starter here. This is his last year, and he's had an absolutely amazing career. Narrowly losing to David Carr by a point, I think, as a freshman, winning his last 2 national titles, and he's going for his third. So if he wins this third one, which I can't think of anyone who's going to stop him, he will have gone second, first, which is an absolutely insane career, only losing a couple matches in his entire career. Now, here is kind of a question mark for Penn State, right? Mitchell is obviously the unquestioned favorite at 65. Does he have the ability, the size, to go up to 74 to make room for true freshman Jaden James? Now, Jaden James is an absolute killer. He had a really, really good performance in the offseason doing freestyle this year. He's someone who is probably going to push for a national championship, a high AA, as a true freshman if he can get into the lineup. So if Mitchell goes up to 174 and Jaden James slots in at 165, that's probably their best lineup, if I'm being completely honest. That's probably their best lineup. Now, I obviously don't know Kale or company personally, but if I was in their shoes, I would have a hard time telling Mitchell to go up after he's had so much success at 165, where you can basically pencil him in as a guaranteed national champion at 165, right? The rest of the NCAA is only getting tougher. Do you really want to risk him going up to 174 and taking, because he's obviously going to place. He's too good to not place, but he, taking the chance that he might lose in the finals or take third or fourth, where you could guarantee yourself a national champion at 165? Or do you optimize for having the best team? I don't know the answer to that. If I had to guess, I'd probably say Mitchell stays at 65, and then Jaden just either takes a year or tries to get up to 74, which I don't know if that's likely, but he might just have to take a year. Who knows what will happen. But safe to say 165 is in good hands once Mitchell leaves, because we're going to have Jaden James there for Penn State. He is going to be dominant. He already is. 174, this is probably the biggest question mark for the reasons we just talked about. Asher Cunningham and Willa Hankel are both tough. I think that they're probably, with over the course of another full season in the Penn State room, they're probably All-American contenders. I kind of put them on a Braden Davis type of level, where they're maybe that 6 through 8 type of range, or maybe in the same range as like the Mirasola brothers, where they're tough, but maybe they're not that elite top 2 or 3 guy yet, like a Lildahl or a Blaze or Van Ness or Messenbrink. So that is something where the Penn State coaches are going to have to kind of decide what they want to do there, right? With the 5-for-5 rules, you kind of have to wrestle your best team. And again, I think Penn State's best team is probably Duke 57, James 65, Messenbrink 74 if you're optimizing for team points. So that's probably their best team. We'll kind of see what ends up happening. There's not a lot in coming in at these weights. So, they're going to be riding with Cunningham and Henkel for the next 3-4 years. And then James is going to be in there as well. So by not having someone in there, I think they're saying they're pretty confident that one of those guys is eventually going to become that contender that they're looking for. So we'll kind of see what happens there. Rocco Welsh is unquestionably the starter at 184, now a two-time finalist as a junior. So he's gone second and second, lost to Starace, and then lost to McAnally. On a side note, I love watching Rocco wrestle. He's just not offensive, man. He just needs to be a little bit more aggressive. He needs to learn from Mitchell. Needs to up his pace. He's big. He's jacked. He's obviously athletic. I don't see why he can't up his pace a little bit and be just as high output as Mitchell could. So I don't know. I have a hard time seeing Rocco win this weight, especially with McAnally coming back, with Angelo coming back, with Sinclair coming back. This is going to be a dogfight of a weight again. Hard time seeing him win it. He's got 2 more shots at it, and he's been in the finals twice. So you figure maybe he makes it again and just kind of breaks through. But if I had to guess, I'd put him in that second or third place range, at least this year, and we'll kind of see what happens over the next 2 years. Just because you look at his matches and his defense and positioning is so good, but he doesn't score a ton of points, right? You look at his path to the finals a couple of years ago against Starace. I think he won something like 3 overtime matches in the quarters, or in the round of 16, the quarters, and then the semis to get to the finals, and Starace beat him in the finals. So I don't remember what his path looked exactly like this year. I think he had a pretty easy path. I feel like I remember seeing, I think Sinclair, Ferrari, and McAnally were all on the bottom side of the bracket, so he kind of had an easier path to the finals. So we'll see what happens this year, but Welsh is going to be there for another 2 years. I would anticipate that they're going to take, they're probably going to pick up another guy or two here at 184 in the next couple of years. And then what probably end up happening is James will end up at 74 at some point. Cunningham and Henkel, whoever ends up the winner out of there will bump up to 84 once Rocco is out. Next, 197, obviously Barr, again, kind of the same deal. 2-time finalist, 1-time champ. He's kind of the unquestioned guy here. He's going to make a run at a Hodge Trophy. He's probably, he's probably going to win it again. There's like a hard time seeing anyone knocking him off at this point. That's pretty obvious. And then up at heavyweight, this is going to be kind of an interesting one with both the Mirasol brothers going for heavyweight. That's tough, man. That's tough. Can you imagine wrestling your brother off for a starting spot at Penn State? That's got to be absolutely bizarre. Cole had a decent year, obviously failed to All-American. I think he's going to punch through this year. I want to say heavyweight lost a lot of guys, and I think Ben Keeter at Iowa is going to be the number 1 ranked guy going into the season. And I could be wrong. I'm thinking of Feldman, but I want to say Cole Mirasola beat Keeter. I could be wrong. I think it happened in a duel. But Mirasola definitely has, Cole definitely has the potential to be a top 3, 4, 5 guy. Hard time seeing him win it, but definitely an All-American contender this year. We'll see what Elijah Brown and the 2 freshmen brings coming into it. But these guys are going to be here for the next 3 years. So it's going to be a Mirasol brother, one or the other for the next 3 years. So overall, that's kind of what the rosters are looking like. Sorry if this was a little disorganized. I'll kind of give my picks for this year for where I think everyone's going to place. Lildahl, I think he wins it again. I think Lildahl wins it, so that's 1 champion. Blaze, man, 133 is so tough with Jax, with Seidel, and Davino. I'm going to say Blaze makes the finals and then loses to one of those guys. I'm going to say Blaze takes second. 141, Nate Desmond. I'm going to say Nate Desmond takes something like 5th or 6th. We'll say 5th. We'll say 5th. I think that's a reasonable range for Nate Desmond. Shane Van Ness, I actually kind of think he's going to regress a little bit. I think he's gonna fall into like a 3 or 4 type of guy. I think he's gonna come down. I'm gonna say he takes 4th as a senior. So I love Shane Van Ness. He's a dog, but unfortunately that weight class is just absolutely stacked. I'm gonna say that he takes 4th. Duke, I'm gonna pick him to win it. I think he's wrestled Rabadou now. He has a feel for him. I think Rabadou is obviously really good, but I think Duke is better. I think Duke won that match. I'm picking him to win it. As a sophomore, Messenbrink picking him to win it. 74, not really knowing who's going to be there. I'm going to say they don't place here. Maybe one of Cunningham or Henkel pulls through and places like 7th or 8th, but I'm going to guess that they don't place there. And then Welsh, I'm going to say Welsh I'm going to say Welsh takes third. I have a hard time seeing him making the finals again. He's kind of scraped by the last couple of years. Obviously, a killer. No shade to Welsh, but I'm going to say he takes third in a very, very tough weight. Barr, I think, wins it. And then I'm going to say whichever Mirasola, probably Cole would be my guess. I'm going to say Cole takes probably something in the range of fifth. So those are my picks. That's kind of what I think Penn State's looking like. Let me know your thoughts, and have a great rest of your day.